It has been quite the fall from grace for the Dallas Mavericks. On February 10th, the Mavericks defeated the Sacramento Kings 122-114 to advance to a 31-26 record, sitting alone in the 4th seed in the West. They had a 3-game lead over the 10-seeded Utah Jazz and seemed like they were trending in the right direction. This would mark their 6th win out of 10 played, and while things were certainly not perfect, things seemed optimistic, as Kyrie just played his 2nd game as a Maverick, and Luka's return to the lineup was on the horizon. Luka would return to the fold on February 11th, and well, it hasn't been pretty since. In the 20 games the Mavericks have played since then, they are 6-14, which is the league's 5th worst record over that stretch, just ahead of Portland, San Antonio, Houston, and Detroit. Not the best company you want to be a part of if you have any intentions of contending. The Mavericks are just 1-5 in their last 6 games, including 2 embarrassing losses to the Charlotte Hornets on back-to-back games who are missing both Terry Rozier and LaMelo Ball. Their lone win in that stretch came against the Indiana Pacers, who are missing 3 starters in Tyrese Halliburton, Buddy Hield, and Miles Turner. As it currently stands, Dallas sits in the 11th spot in the Western Conference on the outside looking into the NBA's play-in tournament. They sit a full game back of Oklahoma City, but realistically, they are 2 games back because OKC won the season series 2-1. This means they own the seeding tiebreaker over Dallas if there were to be a tie in team record. With 5 games to go, making it back to the play-in is certainly conceivable, but at this point, their future is out of their control. When you get to the point where you're counting on other teams to lose, that is when you find yourself in hot water. Of these 5 games they are playing, only one of these games are considerably a gimme, which would be their last game of the season. Their 5 opponents follow as such. Dallas goes to Miami on Saturday, April 1st. Then they play Atlanta the next night in Atlanta on Sunday, April 2nd. Then on the following Wednesday, they play Sacramento at home. After that, they'll play Chicago on that following Friday. And then their last game of the season is versus San Antonio on Sunday, April 9th. As of now, Miami, Atlanta, and Chicago are all jockeying for playoff positions in the East. The Sacramento Kings sit comfortably in the 3rd seed but could conceivably make a push for the 2nd seed, depending on Memphis. And then the final game of the season versus the Spurs should be free, but at that point, the Mavericks could be mathematically eliminated, or Coach Popovich could be playing to spoil. I certainly would not put that past him. Even if the Dallas Mavericks do make the play-in, I can't see him going that far. Luka is one of the best players in the league when it comes to playoff time. He really steps up his game, but currently the way the roster is constructed, it is not built to contend. While in a vacuum, the Kyrie trade wasn't a bad one, but it was the trade that just did not need to happen. Really, the problem just goes back to this past offseason. If you wanted a secondary ball handler, a guy who could score in bunches both on and off the ball, who could handle the reins while Luka was on the bench, well, maybe they should have just paid the guy. Jalen Brunson is having himself a year, and to be quite honest, it wasn't completely unpredictable. Jalen on the season is averaging a career-best 23.6 points, 3.5 rebounds, and 6.1 assists per game, all while being fairly efficient, shooting 48.8% from the field, 41% from 3, and 83.4% from the free throw line, equating to a 59.5 true shooting percentage on the season. Jalen Brunson spoke with JJ Redick last summer about his departure from Dallas and had this to say.
Like when we were talking about like the number from Dallas and stuff like that, like obviously, like I loved my time in Dallas, wanted to be in Dallas. I thought I was gonna be in Dallas for a long time. Like you said, I started having a monster season, and like I went to them before they officially offered it to me, and then by then it was kind of too late. It was like the business came knocking on the door. You know, I had to do my due diligence and look and see what was out there. And but yeah, I honestly, like, people may not believe it, but I talked about it with my dad since like year 1 or 2. So yeah, we're gonna be here for the rest of our career.
Jalen felt as though he was being used as trade bait last season. As late as January of 2022, Jalen wanted to sign a 4-year, $56 million contract extension with Dallas, but that extension offer didn't come around until after the deadline last season. Jalen would go on to New York to get paid $106 million over 4 years that summer, an offseason move that I imagine is haunting Dallas. Jalen was phenomenal in the 22 playoffs for Dallas, highlighted by an incredible Round 1 series versus the Utah Jazz, where he averaged 27.8 points per game. Luka missed the first 3 games of the series, and Jalen put the team on his back in a 6-point win in Game 2, where he scored 41 points himself. I think it's safe to say that $100 million payday was well-deserved for Jalen. Simply because you omitted signing back Jalen, you then find yourself needing to make a swing this past trade deadline for another guard to play alongside Luka to help him out, simply because he cannot do it all on his own. Perhaps the Kyrie trade never happens if Brooklyn doesn't fall apart as it seems, maybe Dallas trades for someone else, or no trade happens at all. This is just a perfect example of Dallas shooting themselves in the foot. If you sign back Jalen, who is giving you at least 85% of what Kyrie gives you at about 60% of the cost, you don't need to make a deadline deal. If you still want to move Dinwiddie and Finney-Smith, you could then possibly move those guys for someone who really fits a positional need on the roster. For the life of me, I just could not figure out why Dallas did not target Jakob Poeltl this past deadline. Dallas has not had a legitimate rim protector who could play starter minutes since Tyson Chandler was around a decade ago. I don't know if you're familiar with the saying, but this is just a great example of death by 1,000 cuts. Making the wrong moves, not pulling the trigger on the right moves, it all adds up in the end, and hopefully it doesn't cost him Luka Doncic. If we take a look at the roster now, it's hard to pick out any positive defenders without even looking at any statistics. One of the few positive defenders this team had was traded away for Kyrie. Dorian Finney-Smith was having a bit of a down year this year, but he was still a very helpful player on the defensive end who could guard multiple positions. The Mavericks now have exactly 0 guys you could trust to switch on the defensive end. As a team, the Mavericks allow opponents to shoot 48.5% from the field, which would be the 6th worst mark of any team in the league right now. The Mavericks do a good job of chasing opponents off of the 3-point line, but because they have no backline defense, this allows teams to roam freely in the paint. Teams are shooting 65.3% within 6 feet of the rim against Dallas this season. If you just take a look at some surface level statistics, the Dallas Mavericks are 23rd in the league in defensive rating. All 10 teams that are outside of the top 20 in defensive rating are all below 500 on the season, with the exception of the Sacramento Kings, who currently feature the league's #1 best rated offense. I looked through every season from last year until the 1999-2000 season. 20 of the 22 NBA seasons since then, the winner of the finals had a team defensive rating that ranked within the top 10. The 2 exceptions to that were the 2001 Lakers, who were 21st in defensive rating. This was Kobe and Shaq's second title of their three-peat. If I had to guess, there must have been some coasting. The 2000 Lakers were ranked 1st in defensive rating, while the 2002 Lakers were ranked 7th in defensive rating. The other exception was the 2018 Warriors, who were ranked 11th in defensive rating. That team also featured Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, and Kevin Durant. I think that speaks for itself. You take all of this, and then you throw kerosene on the fire with Jason Kidd. Kidd has some mind-boggling rotations and maybe has some of the most bizarre post-game presser quotes out of any coach this season. I am not in the locker room, but you could just tell by how the players are chatting and how they're performing. I can't imagine Kidd has a great grasp of the team right now. I would be shocked to see him coaching next year. This year can mark the end of something in Dallas. The offseason ahead will be crucial. I can't see Luka leaving just yet, but Dallas has a lot of roster retooling to do. They have 2 young guys to be excited about in Jaden Hardy and Josh Green, but they need to retain Kyrie Irving this offseason and make sure they finally put some competent pieces on the defensive end around Luka. Only time will tell, but this summer will be an interesting one.